It has been a messy week in the security business. Steve's here for Security Now, and we'll talk about two huge stories. The SSL certificate breach at Komodo, and this one that just happened at Epsilon, the mailing list company that revealed your mailing list, your email address, and millions of others by accident. It's all coming up next on Security Now.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Audio bandwidth for Security Now is provided by Winamp for Android, the ultimate media player for your desktop and Android device, featuring wireless sync. Download it free at winamp.com/Android. Video bandwidth for Security Now is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com. This is Security Now with Steve Gibson, episode 295, recorded April 6th, 2011. SSL and Epsilon breaches. Security Now is brought to you by Netflix. Watch thousands of TV episodes and movies streamed to your PC, Mac, or TV instantly. Plus, get DVDs by mail in about one business day. For your free 30-day trial, go to netflix.com/twit. And by FreshBooks, the easy online invoicing service that gets you paid quickly and makes you look more professional. Get started with a free package right now at freshbooks.com. And by Carbonite. Backing up the files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial plus 2 free months with purchase, go to carbonite.com. Offer code SecurityNow. It's time for Security Now. We're starting a little late today because of a scheduling change earlier in the morning. We had a great triangulation with Corey Doctorow, who is a fan of this show. Hello, Corey. He was talking about listening to this show. Steve Gibson is, isn't that cool? Steve Gibson is here. He's our security guru.
What a surprise. I'm here for Security Now.
Wow. That would be the 295th time you've done that.
Who would have guessed? Yes,
Episode
indeed.
295. We are going to talk about two big stories in the news today. The SSL breach
At Komodo.
Yeah. And the Epsilon hack, which is just breaking this week.
Well, and there's even, like, you've probably heard about this massive SQL injection, which has affected millions of links that Google turns up. It's a huge automated SSL injection attack, which is routing people to sort of mid-tier companies' websites to a malicious, your computer's been infected, download this to fix your problem kind of. So we got lots of news.
I'll tell you how I always find out about stuff like that. Now, I had read about that last week, but of course I got a million phone calls on the radio show. Well, not a million, but 3 or 4 from people who'd gotten bit by it. If I get 3 or 4 on the radio show, you know it's very widespread. So I'm glad we can cover that as well. Steve Gibson, the man at grc.com, the creator of Spinrite, security guru, author of a great many free security utilities at grc.com, and the host of our show. But before we begin, Steve, I do want to welcome a new sponsor to the show. First time ever. Yeah, I'm really thrilled about this. We've been trying to get them on the on network for literally for years, because I'm such a big fan. And I'm actually, my only fear was that everybody who could possibly ever listen to this show or any of our shows was already a member.
I was going to say, no one's ever heard of these people before. Yeah.
But I was pleased to hear that you are not. So this ad's for you, Steve Gibson.
Oh, good. Okay.
And I'm talking about Netflix. I know everybody's heard of Netflix. Netflix is an amazing company that started out, of course, with DVDs by mail. That was a brilliant insight that their CEO had, Reed Hastings. He says it happened when he was in a computer science class many moons ago, and the professor says, what's the greater bandwidth? A single fiber strand from New York to Chicago, or a truck loaded with DVDs? And I tell you what, if you try to load that, send all those DVDs, all those videos via that fiber, you might actually lose to a truck driving to Chicago because there's so much data on those. And when that was the insight that led him to start doing DVD by mail. Now, something's changed since then. Broadband has really become widespread, and Netflix is now doing a lot of streaming with their Watch Instantly. I am such a fan of Netflix Watch Instantly. And when they first started this a couple of years ago, I immediately started using it. You can do it on your computer. You can do it on your iPhone. You can do it on your iPad. But you can also do it on a large number now of devices that are attached to your television set. I use a Roku box, but all the new Blu-ray players do it. In fact, it's kind of the gold standard. If you're going to make a box that attaches to an HD TV, you better darn well have Netflix streaming capability. Tens of thousands of movies. I don't know what the current count is, but if you go to Netflix.com and you click the Watch Instantly tab, you'll see a variety of movies, brand new movies. Netflix has a great recommendation engine, which has gotten better and better. Documentaries, TV shows. This is the thing that's exciting me. In fact, I just saw that today Netflix did a deal for all 8 seasons of Mad Men. See, this is the way to watch TV. Instead of going, there's no commercials. You can watch it instantly or add it to your instant queue, which is just like the Netflix queue. I have, let's see how many movies in my instant queue now. Probably is several hundred. Because whenever I see a movie that I want to watch, I just add it to my instant queue. So there's the 234 in the DVD queue, but look at that, 367 in the instant queue. But I don't have to take it from the queue, really. I can watch any movie that's there anytime. And I just have to say, I am a huge fan. Oh, look at Dragon Tales. Now, that wasn't me. That's the most recently watched. My son had a sleepover with some friends. My son is 16. I think they were fooling around. And then they watched Harpoon, Whale Watching Massacre. I have to say, I love Netflix streaming for the whole family. You don't have to wait for the DVD to come in the mail. You can watch anything you want. And coming very soon, I'm very happy to say they've got a whole bunch of new TV shows. Glee just was added to the TV show list. That's really exciting. You can watch seasons of Glee. There's The Office. And I'm really excited that Mad Men's coming. Are you not yet a Netflix streaming subscriber? Try it free for 30 days right now. Go to netflix.com/twit. Now, I know most of you watching are already a subscriber, but give it a try. There are a variety of different subscriptions. 1 disc, 2 discs, 3 discs, 5 discs. I'm a 5-disc subscriber. That's 5 discs at a time. And when I mail one back, I get a new one. But all of those subscriptions include the Watch Instantly subscription. They even have a $7.99 a month Watch Instantly. That is the best deal in town. Netflix.com/twit, free for 30 days. Steve, can I get you to try it?
It really does sound like a good deal.
It's a great deal. What do you like in Fringe these days? What is the TV show that you would like to?
Fringe, I'm hooked on, and
okay, first 3 seasons of Fringe, all on there. On there, so you could watch. You can go back, and what I love about it is you can watch it without commercial interruption. And in fact, what you can do, which is really fantastic, is consume shows like candy, one episode after another in one massive binge.
Well, and I hate missing an episode. So
right.
If something happens and I miss something, it'd be really nice as just grab it and watch it as a fill-in.
I never saw any of Lost, but what I'm thrilled to see is all the seasons of Lost, including season 6, seasons 1 through 6, are all available on instant streaming. So if you really, if you wanted to waste a weekend, go back to the beginning and watch it all. Please give it a shot. Netflix.com/twit. I didn't mean to go on so long, but I just love it so much, and I would love for you to try it. And I can't believe that Steve is not a Netflix guy. You stun me, Steve.
Well, I'm old school. I've got multiple TiVos and all that. So,
the cool thing is all these new devices, they have Netflix on them. So, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, the Wii, the Roku box, PC or Mac, you can watch anywhere. I watch on my iPad. It's great. Anyway, enough of that. Enough of that. Let's get to the security news, because there was another big story we didn't mention.
There's a bunch of stuff. We got to go back a little bit and just sort of mop up the debris from the RSA big SecurID break-in that we talked about, I guess it was just last week. Some new information has come out from RSA. They're trying to paint it as a very sophisticated attack. Now, remember, this again, this is my most recent, my own personal blog posting, because what they initially announced and said was so annoyingly little that no one knew what to make of it. Yet they're like the major multi-factor hardware token provider for the industry. As you mentioned, lots of government and, you know, Fortune 500 companies use RSA because, I mean, they're, you know, RSA are the inventors of crypto. You know, state-of-the-art asymmetric crypto came from the founders of RSA. So the fact that they were being so circumspect led us to believe, okay, well, sure, they're embarrassed. They may have some fiduciary obligations to their stockholders, not to say too much. They maybe need to get word out to other people who can deal with the problem. Anyway, it turns out it was not a big league sophisticated attack. It was something we've talked about, and in fact, I've been talking about for the last couple of weeks before this. Somebody opened an Excel file containing a Flash movie.
Oh, no.
That's all it was. It was a so-called spear phishing attack, meaning that what RSA did reveal is that two small groups within RSA received some email that was targeted at them. So it was written to encourage them to open it. Well, it was automatically routed into their junk email folders. So it wasn't even on their map. But one of the employees in one of these small groups looked in her junk mail folder, and the email was titled 2011 Recruitment Plan. And she opened the email, and there was an attachment, 2011 Recruitment Plan.xls, making it a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. That she opened, and that allowed a Flash movie, an Adobe Flash file that was embedded in the spreadsheet with at that time, unknown exploit, a zero-day flaw, which Adobe has since patched, that allowed it to run, and that installed a well-known Trojan, which is freely available on the internet, called Poison Ivy. It's a so-called RAT, an R-A-T, a Remote Administration Access Toolkit Trojan, which then phoned home, that is, it called outwards from her machine to a remote server that gave bad guys essentially the ability to do anything that she could do from her machine, they could do. And that's all it took. That was their foothold in RSA, and the rest, as they say, is history. So and I'd been talking about, Flash in embedded Excel spreadsheets for quite a while prior to this, because this was a well-known problem that had been successfully used in spear phishing attacks that have been going on for several months, and unfortunately, RSA was one of the victims of that. And that's all it took for someone to get enough access to their network that they were able to get credentials, elevate their access as necessary, and then exfiltrate what is now known to be essentially the keys to the kingdom, these master RSA files containing the mappings between the publicly available serial number of tokens and the secret key, the cryptographic key embedded in these hardware devices. And as we know, at least one major agency has dropped RSA. I mean, they can't trust their two-factor authentication any longer. And RSA's advice was, well, don't let anybody see your token, and make sure all your other security is good. Yes, basically, don't rely on that second factor. Oopsie. Yeah. Now, what's weird is that I had spoken to Stina Evansford, our founder of Yubico and great friend of the podcast, about a month before she, at the unfortunately or coincidentally the RSA Security Conference. She was out here for that.
Is that put on by RSA?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, but I mean, and I'm sure funded and financed by lots of other people. But I mean, RSA is like the main.
They have to be so embarrassed by this.
Yeah, it was not good.
They're supposed to be the security wizards.
Well, so there's a technology known as HSM, Hardware Security Modules. And these things are typically $15,000 just to get in the door. The idea is, if you've got your servers spread around like in data centers, and they have really, really, really important stuff in them, how do you keep them physically safe and protected and network level safe? That is, as we've often heard, the main breaches are from internal employee subterfuge and sabotage of systems to a greater degree than is external. We don't normally hear about it because they're not network-wide sweeping automated attacks, but much of the problem comes from employees. So how do you protect something essentially from yourself, but also from like if something is vitally important? So this was the problem that Yubico faced as their own YubiKeys gained in popularity. They suffered an outage at one point earlier on not recently, but earlier on in their startup history that we're largely responsible for causing, because we helped Stina get some traction in the industry. And that was a real problem for them, for their users, because in order to authenticate a one-time password device, you need some authentication server somewhere that's able to say, yep, that's the next password in sequence that we would expect. So they realized they needed to, they're still at this point a very small company. Just a handful of people. So they're thinking, okay, we need data. We need to replicate this database of private keys around the globe. We can't just be, in one location the way we are. It's time to get serious about this. But then they faced the question, how do we protect these? How do we, have a server in Silicon Valley and one on the East Coast and a couple others in Europe? And the point being that all of these systems have to contain duplicate copies of everything so that local users are able to authenticate against them. But the flip side is you have to keep them secure. So they looked into the whole hardware security module solution. And it turns out, it's $15,000 just to open the door. But, you have to have typically, you'd be repeating this everywhere. And you end up with like physical security and data level security. Well, what they decided was, Jacob, their lead techie person, said, why don't we put this in a USB stick? Like, put everything that we have to protect in a USB dongle. And let's build a cryptographic processor and a true random number generator, not just a pseudo random number generator, but since we'll have hardware, we can do weird things like measure the noise threshold in a diode, which is actually generating quantum level noise, and capture that and use that to generate cryptographic material. And our listeners can't see it, but I am holding one up in front of the camera, which is this is marked beta 0.96. 0.9.6 is the YubiHSM, as they're calling it. It's the Yubico hardware security module. They have essentially solved the problem and reduced the cost of protecting literally the keys to the kingdom, all the stuff that companies absolutely cannot lose control of, down from $15,000 to $500. So, and I imagine, I guess it does have, that's got their name on it, so they did some plastic molding. I mean, it looks, for the people who are not seeing the video stream, it looks like a regular USB, thumb drive.
Yeah, same size. Yeah,
it's all it is. It's got the USB interface. And so what they've built in here, there is a processor and non-volatile memory and some fancy electronics that uses quantum level noise to generate true randomness, better than you can generate algorithmically. If our listeners are interested, just yubico.com. If you look at like what's new, I think is the first link on their site. It'll take you to yubico.com/YubiHSM, YubiHSM, where there's a lot of information. They're still at beta at this point. The final device will retail for $500. And, from their site, they explain that it contains a cryptographically secure true random number generator, a store for cryptographic keys. That is a secure place to store cryptographic keys. It also incorporates a complete YubiKey authenticator that has enough storage for 1,000 YubiKeys. So, for example, if you were a company that wanted to deploy YubiKeys yourself, but not rely on Yubico for authentication, this little gizmo here can store your YubiKeys secrets.
But you'd need a server.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you plug this into a server,
okay,
and the server, and so the server passes to this.
Got it.
What the YubiKey has just said, and it says, "Yep, that's good," or "Nope, that's not good." But the point is, it's a black
box. It's a sealed black box that can't be modified.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It is a sealed black box that cannot be modified. And they list some use cases for this, saying, you run an authentication service, secrets are stored on a computer that has to be accessible from the internet, and are concerned that one day it might be hacked. You want to prevent system administrators and staff who have physical access to the server from copying the database and getting access to sensitive data.
Yes, good point.
You need an architecture that prevents a hacker from compromising your secrets,
right,
but allows you to run your service full speed. Or you've got a smaller fleet of YubiKeys and want to do the authentication yourself. So just today, on April 6th, 2011, they have announced their YubiHSM. And if they are making available betas of these to interested developers because they're soliciting people to flesh out the full specification to make sure they haven't forgotten something that might be useful to add.
That's the right way to do this. Absolutely.
Yes.
Get the security community to look at this.
Yes. So on their site, it says Yubico is inviting its developer community to refine the YubiHSM and define the functionality set of the final product. Developers who would like to contribute with applications and further development of the open source client software can today apply to get a free beta YubiHSM from Yubico.
That's they anticipate what, about $500 to buy this?
Yes, they're saying that it'll be $500, which is way below the entry price by orders of magnitude, 30 times cheaper than a $15,000 similar device, which is the only other thing available now.
Now, somebody's saying in the chat, a couple of people in the chat said, yeah, but look how easy that would be to lose. Well, I don't imagine you'd keep that on your key ring. You keep it plugged into the server.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's in a data center in a locked, locked environment. But remember, if RSA had these files similarly protected, they could not have been exfiltrated.
Right. Now, even if somebody stole it, it's useless to them, right?
Correct. Exactly. Because, it itself is protected cryptographically, and it cannot be induced through the API. There's nothing someone can do that can get the secrets out of it.
So even physical access to the server isn't going to compromise it.
Precisely.
Yeah. But don't lose it.
No. Well, no. I mean, you would have a couple of them, or you would have this data backed up offline.
Oh, you could do that. Okay.
The point is, you don't want it online.
Right.
It is. It's like I've never gone into the architecture of my own e-commerce system, but the data that we have is not available at that server. It's I did it from scratch. The right way.
It's the equivalent of the cabbie's cash is not kept on premises.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. And unfortunately, clearly, RSA's data was accessible for exfiltration. And this should be a lesson to all companies. And what I like about what Yubico has done is solving this problem no longer is necessarily super expensive.
Right.
You could imagine smaller companies, developers listening to this podcast who are thinking, wow, right now we're just hoping we're not hacked. Right. But if you move your stuff into behind this kind of protection, then you don't have to hope any longer. You can know that you're safe against being hacked.
Awesome.
And they've got a PDF you can download that's got the entire specification of how this thing works, what it does, and how to talk to it. So I wanted to give everyone the heads up that this thing now exists.
What a smart company.
Last week, I deliberately didn't talk about something because it just seemed unlikely to me. I got a ton of email and tweets from people asking about Samsung's laptops coming pre-installed with keystroke loggers.
Little pat on the back for us. Because I saw that story and I did not leap on it. And I know you didn't either.
I just
Something was fishy about that story.
Well, okay. The good news is our friend Alex Eckelberry, who used to be at Sunbelt, but now is technically GFI's chief technology officer, because GFI, I guess, bought Sunbelt. He stepped up with a blog posting that I really appreciated. The industry appreciated it because they explained what happened. This whole rumor of Samsung laptops coming with keystroke loggers pre-installed was the consequence of a false positive from one AV product, and it was Sunbelt's. It's their Viper, V-I-P-R-E. The Slovenian language directory.
Slovenian,
right. Language directory for Windows Live was C:\Windows\SL, which was the same directory created by the star logger, thus SL, star logger keystroke logger. And unfortunately, somehow all that Viper was doing was looking for the presence of that subdirectory off of Windows to make its declaration. Now, Alex, in his blog, posted, quote, "The detection was based off of a rarely used and aggressive Viper detection method using folder paths as a heuristic. I want to emphasize rarely, as these types of detectors and detections are seldom used, and when they are, they're subject to an extensive peer review and QA process. So they recognized that in retrospect, just looking for the presence of a subdirectory SL was really not specific enough. And it
No
did.
kidding.
Yeah. It would tend to produce false positives. In this case, it did. And it was that sole thing was entirely responsible for the industry briefly going insane and calling, and accusing Samsung of installing keystroke loggers when in fact that wasn't the case at all. So for all the people who were concerned, that's essentially what happened.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay, malicious code injection. Another event that's happened in the last week is the most successful SQL injection attack ever seen. Initially, it looked like it was being reported as at least hundreds of thousands of websites, but later, a Google search for domain names known to be used by the attackers uncovered more than 3 million pages, web links, which were displaying URLs to those domains. It was not Webmon. Shoot, I can't remember the name of the company that first uncovered. They named this Lizamoon, Lizamoon, because that was the first domain they saw. WebSense. It was WebSense.
WebSense, that's right, yeah.
That ran across Lizamoon, and so they dubbed this the Lizamoon attack. But since then, 21 other domains were found. So what happened was someone created an automated SQL injector, which rummaged through all kinds of websites looking for an SQL injection vulnerability.
And by the way, as somebody's saying in the chat room, this is not a new vulnerability they were taking advantage of.
Right.
It's an old one.
It was automated, and that's what made the difference.
Yep.
So all that had to happen was that in your typical Web 2.0 style attack, a web server does not adequately sanitize user submissions.
It's supposed to, but that's just it's a mistake. It's a bug.
It's a bug. And so basically a web spider posted these SQL commands such that when the server went to display the page containing the content that this spider had put up there, instead it created links to these 21 separate domains, which presented a dialog box saying a pop-up basically calling itself Windows Stability Center, looking like it was from Microsoft. Though Microsoft doesn't have anything called Windows Stability Center. And so these were, small businesses, community groups, sports teams, sort of mid-tier organizations who were hosted, on any number of providers.
Everybody uses MySQL. Everybody. I mean, we use it.
Yeah, I don't, but yeah, I know.
You're smart.
Everybody else does.
I wish we didn't, but yeah.
It's just you have to be extremely careful when this is the kind of technology that you use, that you've got filters. To
illustrate that this is a long-standing problem, there's a great comic I'm going to show here from XKCD. Our chat room reminded us. XKCD.com/327. Hi, this is your son's school. We're having some computer trouble. Oh, dear, did he break something? In a way. Did you really name your son Robert Tick, parenthesis, semicolon, drop table students, semicolon, dash, dash, question mark? Oh, yes, little Bobby Tables, we call him. Well, we've lost this year's student records. I hope you're happy. And I hope you've learned to sanitize your database inputs. That is a very geeky comic, but boy, it says it right there. That says it all.
Yep, exactly.
That's obviously an SQL command that says delete a table, the entire student's table. And if you didn't check your inputs, if you allowed somebody to type that into a URL, well, shame on you.
Right, because then when the server tried to display it, it would execute it as if it were a valid command.
Oh, Lord.
And your SQL database would drop that table.
Say, yeah, whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, problem with computers, they're very compliant. Hey, before we get to, you want to talk about Epsilon?
No, go ahead.
Before we get to Epsilon, because this is kind of one of like 2 or 3 big stories this week. And it's one that got me steaming, to be honest with you. In fact, I kind of really talked about this on the radio show, because this is, our audience is not going to get fooled by any of this, but the people who listen to the radio show are normal people, and I guarantee you this bad advice from Epsilon is not going to help them at all. But before we talk about that, I want to talk about FreshBooks, a great way to do your invoicing. A lot of you are in business for yourselves, you're contractors. You have to send out invoices. It's probably the least pleasant part of your monthly labors. I know it was for me. I hated it. So much so that I'd often forget to send them out way late, and then I'd forget to track them, and I just, it cost me money until I found FreshBooks. Amber MacArthur told me about this in 2004, and I used them for years. I now have people, but believe me, people are a lot more expensive than FreshBooks. In fact, FreshBooks is free for the first 3 clients. You can upload your company logo, so it looks like you've got a very professional invoice. Most of the time, you're going to email these, but they will print, stamp, and mail them for you if you want. That saves a lot of time. Some old-fashioned clients still want a paper invoice, but I love the electronic ones because there's a button right on the invoice that says "Pay right now," and they can use a credit card or one of 11 different online payment services like PayPal, Authorize.net to pay you immediately. They can even set up automatic payment. Get the invoice, send the payment. And trust me, this means you get paid faster. Most clients just want to pay you, but they forget or they have to wait till the cycle or what. This is so much easier. There's a great iPhone app and a web app too that allows you to track time and then zip that time right into the invoice automatically. So if you bill by hours, what a lifesaver this is. FreshBooks, it's free today for up to 3 of your clients. And I want you to try it right now because some of you who sign up already, some of our listeners have won this birthday cake. They are doing a drawing every day to pick a birthday cake from a new customer, one of our audience members. It doesn't have to be your birthday, and they'll send you the cake. And I've seen the cake, and it looks really good. if you need another reason to try it. FreshBooks.com. Easy online invoicing. Trust me, this is the way to invoice. Okay, let's talk Epsilon.
Okay, so Epsilon is the world's largest permission-based email marketing services company.
Who knew?
I know. I've never heard of them before.
Who knew? Yeah.
2,500 clients, including 7 of the Fortune 10. So 7 of the largest 10 corporations in the United States use Epsilon to do their customer emailings. So, when we get email from 1-800-Flowers, A Books, Air Miles, Ameriprise Financial, Barclays Bank, Beachbody, BB Stores, Best Buy, Brookstone, Capital One, City Market, City, Dillon's,
and he's
Disney
just in the
Destinations,
C's.
Eileen Fisher, Ethan Allen, Food for Less, Fred Meyer Fries, Hilton Honors Program, Home Shopping Network, JP Morgan Chase, King Soopers, Kroger, Lacoste, LL Bean's Visa Card, Marriott Rewards, McKinsey & Company, MoneyGram, New York & Company, QFC, Ralph's, Red Roof Inn, Ritz-Carlton Rewards, Robert Half, Target, the College Board, TD Ameritrade, TD Ameritrade, TiVo, U.S. Bank, and Walgreens.
Wow.
They were all breached. That is, Epsilon is saying that 2% of its email clients, which 2% of 2,500 would be, 50, were affected. Well, I just read the list of known clients who are now vulnerable to a much heightened level of spear phishing. The problem is that what was lost was the email databases for those companies.
So people didn't get the credit card numbers or personal information. They just got email addresses.
And names. And that's the problem, is that there's now there's a much greater chance that you will click on, a Hilton Honors Program email that knows your name.
Hi, Leo.
Yes.
Your Hilton Honors Program is about to expire. Want to renew and make sure those miles are still good? Click this link.
Right.
And then you log in.
Right.
But it's not them.
Right. So, I mean, because of the breadth of this, I mean, this was a huge breach of their database. And once again, one wonders if they had protected this in a hardware security module of some kind, making it not available for theft, then, they wouldn't have egg on their face. So other security blogs and security aware people are warning people to be especially alert for spear phishing attacks. That is, from the list that I read, which is the most complete list I've managed, I pulled it from a bunch of different places.
Different places, okay.
Yeah, and that's why I had to alphabetize it in order to make sure I hadn't lost any and to remove duplicates, because there were so many companies there. But their email addresses their email lists are out along with the people's names. That is, whatever it is that what you normally see when you receive email from these companies it comes from the database that was lost. So the point is, that's what you'll see when you get fraudulent email, and may be much more inclined to click on a link. So, so it's dangerous.
And the funny thing is, Epsilon gave boilerplate language to send out. All these companies send out essentially the same email.
Yep.
And unfortunately, now Chase was pretty good. Somebody sent me the Chase email, and it says, "We want to remind you, Chase will never ask for your personal information or login credentials in an email. As always, be cautious if you receive emails asking for personal information, etc." Many of these, the Chase email was pretty good. It was pretty good. It actually said don't click links and stuff. Most of these, the one that Epsilon seems to have sent out to everybody, said, don't click links on email from people you don't know. But that's the problem. It's going to come from these companies.
Right.
It's not going to be from people you don't know. It's going to be from Citibank and Chase.
Exactly. Essentially, the data that was lost, that they've lost control of, that was exfiltrated from them, is what they use, is exactly what they use to generate the legitimate email, because they're the people that send the email out on behalf of their clients.
Right. So what is the advice? I mean, I know our audience knows it, but just to reiterate.
I mean, it is, I would say, if you receive email, because email itself, email is displaying in a web page where the URL behind the link that you click can be masked.
The link can say Citibank.com. Click here.
Yes.
And go to hacker.com/Citibank.
Or CITYBANK.
Right.
I mean, a tiny change in the domain name takes you to somewhere else. So, I mean, unfortunately, it is, I mean, and again, this is what our listeners know. It is just not safe to click on a link in email that you receive in email. If you really have to, for some reason, you could look at the email headers maybe, but unfortunately, you got to be a real expert, because you and I have talked long ago on tech TV shows, Leo, about spoofing email headers and how easily that can be done.
It's trivial.
So, I mean, the real news is read the email, then manually go to the website, entering the URL yourself, logging in, not through email, but using LastPass or whatever you use for logging in, and arrange to achieve the same end, but not clicking something that you receive an email. Treat the email as just the information that something is important that they're bringing to your attention, like, oh, look, your miles are about to expire unless they hear from you immediately.
Right.
Generally, the phishing emails use an emergency of some sort to get people to act. They're not saying, "Hi, we just wanted to make sure you're happy with the service we're providing you," because people go, yeah, fine, delete. It's there's a call to action in spear phishing emails that is presenting you with some dire event unless you take action, and people go, "Ooh," and in the moment of worry, they click on that link without, even if they know better, it's like, "Oh, I better do this right now." It's like,
I've come so close because they scare you. You click the link and it all looks legitimate. And then, fortunately, in my case, I've always gone, whoa, as soon as it asks you for anything. And you look at the URL. But you're right, hand type that's what I told everybody in the radio show. So thank you for reiterating that. That's all you have to do. Hand type it. Now, there is one, and the chat room came up with this. There's one side benefit to the fact that Epsilon services so many of these big companies. You can go to their website and opt out of all emails with one click. So if you go to epsilon.com or search for Epsilon consumer opt-out information, there is a page where you can say, "Don't send me any more crap."
Well, now, are those only promotional emails, or are those like, true account maintenance sort of emails?
Well, it's marketing emails.
Oh, okay.
So it says many consumers value and seek out targeted advertising and look forward to receiving offers of interest at their homes via email. So you can choose.
Amazing that you can opt out of 2,500.
Wouldn't that be? You can choose not to receive most. It doesn't say all, but most targeted advertising by following the links below. Consider your choices carefully. Opting out of Epsilon services will stop the delivery of some targeted advertising.
Some spam is good. Right.
It will not eliminate all targeted offers, it says. So much for that. But at least some. I've been unsubscribed. I've been on an unsubscribe tear. Anytime I get something, any bacon, I just unsubscribe. And I'm hoping that will take hold.
Yeah. So the do not track movement is gaining some traction. For people who use Twitter, there is now an account. It's just @do-not-track, and I am following it and would recommend it for anyone who's interested. Mozilla blogged at the end of March that, since we've last spoken to our listeners through this podcast, that advertisers and publishers are beginning to adopt and implement do not track. Specifically in their blog post, and they said that the AP News Registry service run by the Associated Press implemented the DNT header across 800 news sites, servicing 175 million unique visitors each month. And the Digital Advertising Alliance, which actually I care about much more, the DAA, which includes the 5 major media and advertising agencies, is initiating a process to explore incorporating the DNT header, as proposed by Mozilla, into its self-regulatory program for online behavior advertising. The DAA represents more than 5,000 leading media and technology companies that span the entire marketing media ecosystem. So the good news is, this is the same header that IE9 offers.
Oh, good.
That DNT:1. And I immediately contacted Giorgio, the famous author of NoScript, whose headers were not compatible. And I said, hey, looks like this has pretty much been decided. How about switching NoScript over? And he said, Steve, I did that a couple months ago.
What a surprise.
Oh, okay, good. So the good news is, if you, and of course, Giorgio reminded me also that using NoScript to produce the header allows you to allow some and disallow others. So it gives you granular control, whereas the other guys are just a blanket, stick this DNT:1 header into every request made by the browser, which I think is just fine. So if you haven't yet gone up to version 4 of Firefox, and I have not, because I don't do anything immediately when this sort of thing happens, I'll wait a while, but you are using NoScript. NoScript is now adding this DNT header, as is IE9. You have to turn it on in every case. Nowhere is it enabled by default. So you do need to opt into opting out, but at least it's there. And everyone, all the critics say, yes, well, but it's all, honoring it is optional. It's like, yes, it is at the moment, but, these advertising agencies recognize that, they risk having, Uncle Sam in the U.S. case, drop a heavy foot on them unless they behave well.
Yes, exactly.
And so it's, this is, if ultimately we're going to get a law that says if your browser says DNT:1, it is illegal to track you across the internet. And we're not there yet, but that's the right answer, and it'll end up happening.
And even if we don't get a law, the real problem is bad guys will always circumvent no matter what. But the good guys are going to try. Look, they want to stay in. People like Epsilon want to stay in business. They're not going to. They're not going to, flaunt our requests. I hope.
Right, a clear and explicit request not to be tracked behaviorally.
The problem is, I just was following the rabbit hole of this Epsilon opt-out. They don't make it easy. They ask for, and it's not optional, required, the header from the spam, from the message that you, not who it was from, they want the entire header. Most people will not know how to do that and will not do it.
Right.
Terrible. Just awful.
So I've got a little bit of miscellaneous stuff before we get into talking about Komodo. This just crossed my radar, and I thought this was really interesting. Microsoft offered to purchase 666,624 IPv4 addresses.
We're running
out from the bankruptcy proceedings of Nortel.
Oh, interesting.
The bankrupt Canadian telecom equipment maker. So Nortel's going bankrupt. They're a corporation that had a huge block of IP addresses, and Microsoft has offered, and apparently I just saw something else that looked like it had been accepted, $7.5 million for their block. And it's like, wait a minute, since when are IPv4 addresses for sale? I mean, they're you get them for free when you have an ISP. So I'm interested in how that can be regarded as a corporate asset. Why they wouldn't immediately return to the provider of Nortel's, wherever Nortel got them from some registry. It's like, wait, they're not property. They're sort of, I don't know what they are, but I don't know how you can buy them. But Microsoft's paying $11.25 each for these. And as you said, Leo, it's like, oh, no, we're running out of them. And I have seen other notes talking about the emergence of a black market or a gray market, at least, or dark gray, in IPv4 addresses. Maybe, I guess they're going to become worth something. Wow, I don't know how you can sell them. I don't know
could
how
auction them off.
Property.
But it does change bankruptcy proceedings. You now actually have some assets that might be of some value.
Yeah.
Ignore that person looking over my shoulder. It's my son. Go ahead, Steve.
Someone tweeted something that I really appreciated to me that I wanted to share. Just noting, he said, Steve, you don't need to be quite so embarrassed. Skype's SSL certificate expired on March 31st.
Well, it's about time.
And, of course, caught them with their pants down.
Funny?
It's happened to me. It's happened a couple other times to, notable large organizations. And so you go, oh, crap, and you immediately go, with your registrar and renew your SSL certificate and get it up on your servers. So it does happen even to the big guys.
Amazing.
I also wanted to just note that there is a forthcoming virtual machine solution to allow Android to run on Windows called BlueStacks.com.
That's cool.
Yes. It's not out yet. They ask you to follow them on Twitter at BlueStacks Inc. So it's just at BlueStacks Inc. If you go to BlueStacks.com, you get a little flash video that plays and sort of shows you some pretty graphics talking about the idea of, being able to have Android apps running in a VM on Windows. which, so we talked about how Android was hosting a VM last week and would allow you to use that in order to preview Android apps. Now you'll be able to do it locally, running them under Windows. There is also something called Android-x86.org, which apparently has made this happen also, but I'm told that it's much more difficult to get it up and configured and with video drivers and all kinds of weird stuff. So with any luck, a VM would be a great little solution for basically giving you a little Android machine running under Windows that you could run Android apps in.
I can't wait to do this. I wish it were there now, actually.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it. And I am following BlueStacks Inc. in one of my following Twitter accounts.
Yes, so I see them. I just followed them myself because I.
Yeah, but you follow 1,000.
I know.
17,000 or something. So you'll never know if it happens. But I'll let you know. I'm sure you'll know before I know, Leo.
I'll let you know.
That'd be very nice. And I wanted to mention I got a nice little note from a Neil Warwick. With a subject that caught my eye, saying that Spinrite saves the sky, and I thought, okay, what? Okay, so he's in Reading, England. He's a Security Now listener. He sent it through the Security Now feedback form at GRC, which is grc.com/feedback. He said, "Hi, Steve. Just thought you'd like to hear a short story about how Spinrite saved my Sky TV DVR from losing all my partner's saved shows, and probably saved me from a lot of nagging too. In the UK, we have a satellite TV service called Sky TV that broadcasts many, many channels. And for most people, it's accessed using a hard disk-based DVR similar to your TiVo boxes. A few weeks ago, our box started freezing and stuttering when viewing live or recorded content. We have an insurance package with Sky to cover breakdown, so I called them. Their only solution was to offer to send an engineer out who would reset, in other words, reformat the hard disk, and if that didn't work, would replace the DVR in its entirety. Having been a listener of Security Now since July 2010, when I saw it mentioned in a magazine, I don't know if he saw Spinrite or Security Now mentioned, he says, I started at the beginning. Well, I think he saw Security Now mentioned in a magazine. So in July 2010, he saw Security Now mentioned in a magazine. He says, I started at the beginning, so as I write this, I'm up to about episode 155. I've been looking for an excuse to buy a copy of Spinrite and thought, why not give it a go? 15 minutes later, Spinrite was downloaded and burned to a CD. I removed the hard drive from the DVR, installed it into a slave PC chassis I had lying around, and booted the CD. I set Spinrite to work immediately and went to bed. Upon getting up the next morning, Spinrite had finished and reported that it had fixed some errors. So I reinstalled the drive into the DVR and powered up. As you will probably have guessed by now, everything worked perfectly. When the engineer showed up to have a look, he couldn't find anything wrong with the system, so left without doing anything. I didn't tell him about Spinrite, as I'm not sure if I'm allowed to open the box under my insurance agreement. Thanks again for a great product and great podcast. Neil Warwick.
Awesome.
He says,
awesome.
P.S. I run a very small computer repair company and would like to offer a Spinrite optimization/check as a service for clients, PCs, etc.
That's a good idea.
Can you tell me what kind of license I would require to do this and how much it would cost? Well, the way we've solved that problem is to ask people who want to run Spinrite on machines they don't themselves own, or a corporation that just wants to run it across their whole organization. We call it a site license. And so we ask people to keep 4 licenses current. So, for example, Neil already has 1. So if he bought 3 more copies, then he would qualify to use Spinrite on any drive that he wants to.
That's a great deal. That's a great deal. I think that's very fair.
Yeah, well, it allows people to try it, and then not, and then they don't have to ask for a refund, and if when they want to upgrade your different license. So I thought, okay, let's just have them maintain 4 current licenses. So when we have an upgrade, if they upgrade all 4, then that's like upgrading their whole license. So the plan works very nicely.
We're going to take a little break, Steve Gibson, and then talk about this Komodo SSL breach.
Really interesting.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about it, of course, last week, but the details coming up. Before we do that, I want to talk about backup, and I have brought into the studio today a couple of teenagers. My son and his friend Henry, Hank and Henry. Hank, tell me something. Do you remember what happened the other day to your computer?
Yeah, it deleted everything.
Yeah, it crashed and you lost the hard drive. And how much did you lose?
A lot.
All your music, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All his sweet beats.
All his sweet beats were lost. You know, you can blame me. You should be, because I should have put Carbonite on that computer. I put it. Well, don't say that you hate me.
I was kidding.
It's on there now.
Okay.
You're backed up now. Remember, I told you you're safe from forevermore.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I put it on Abby's computer when she went to college, and I should have put it on Henry's. He's been doing a lot of music. Just think what's on your hard drive, all the valuable stuff on your hard drive, pictures, emails, financial records. Carbonite's great. You just put it on there, Mac or PC, and it immediately starts backing up to the internet, where it's completely secured and always safe. Knock it off. Never invite teenagers into the studio. They're on spring break right now.
Channel 4 News Team. It's Henry Sharon.
There you go. You want a job on the Channel 4 News team?
I guess so.
It's not going to happen, kids.
Maybe one day.
You gotta work on
Don't
it.
squelch my dreams.
Grow a mustache. Carbonite.com backs it up in the background without slowing your system down, without clogging your internet access. It just trickles it up, but you're always up to date. You can log on anytime on any computer, see your data. So it's cloud storage too. In fact, they have an iPhone, Android, and BlackBerry app as well, absolutely free. And your data is protected. It's safe. It's always there. It's always. Henry, calm down.
Just kidding.
You know, when you were 8 years old, I invited you into the studio at the Screensavers.
Did I mob?
You mobbed. Do you remember what we had to do?
Play video
We
games.
taped your mouth with gaffer's tape.
Oh, what? Why would you do that?
You don't remember that? Get the gaffer's tape! It's Carbonite.com. Offer code security now. Try it free for 2 weeks if you decide to buy. Use the offer code at Carbonite.com. Again, security now, and you get
You guys think I could do my dad's
2
joke
months.
better than he
No, he
does?
can't. Go away. 2 months free.
I think that it's their decision.
For the price. He's asking the chat room to tell him that he can have a job here. Well, they're going to say yes, of course.
I know, because
Carbonite.com. Shh, we're doing a commercial. This is the first thing you have to learn. This is how Daddy makes his money.
you told me to get it.
Carbonite.com. Offer code security now. 2 months for the price of 12. Carbonite.com.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Henry.
Bye, guys.
And now back to our regularly scheduled programming already in progress. Steve, you're glad you didn't have kids. You're glad you didn't reproduce, aren't you?
It's worked out well for me, Leo.
Dad, walk.
All right, see you. See you later. You're on YouTube. You are automatically. So let's talk about this Komodo breach.
Okay, so there's a really interesting backstory here, because it wasn't initially acknowledged by anyone. What happened was a researcher at the University of Washington's Security and Privacy Research Lab, Jacob Appelbaum, he was just sort of, as he does, monitoring the Chromium, that is Google's Chrome browser open source project. Just sort of, you know, he's like part of the change log, seeing things go by. And in late March, he noticed sort of an odd thing had been added. A bunch of SSL certificate security serial numbers had been put into the source code and blacklisted. So there was a function that had been added that said, you know, essentially see if certificate is blacklisted, and then there was an array of serial numbers. The first one was commented as this is just to be used for testing, but then there was like 9 or 10 others after it. And he thought, that's weird. Why would Chromium be like putting a block of SSL certificate serial numbers into the source? Seems like a strange thing. And this sort of just like raised his curiosity. And then at around the same time, he noted that Mozilla pushed out a security update. And he looked into it. And it was doing the same thing. It had some, it was a little bit thrown off at first because Mozilla's format has a 0-byte prepended to the serial numbers. So a simple match didn't line up. But when he removed that leading 0, then he realized that Mozilla was also blacklisting in a patch a block of SSL certificates. Well, he hangs out at EFF, and EFF has something they call the SSL Observatory, where they monitor the internet, looking sort of at traffic, sort of just trying to watch the way SSL is being used and seeing what's going on. The SSL Observatory had built up over time a big database of certificates. So he was able to essentially process this list and see that it appeared that all of these certificates had been issued by one certificate authority, something called usertrust.com. The URL in the certificate was http://www.usertrust.com, and that seemed to be a subsidiary of some sort of Komodo. And so he sort of thought, okay, it sure seems to me like the only reason Chrome and Mozilla would suddenly be blacklisting a block of certificates is that they're important and they're bogus, they're invalid. So he sent a note to Mozilla who said, something's happened that we don't want to talk about. And now, in fairness to Mozilla, they have since regretted their response, that they weren't immediately forthcoming. But what happened was there was some dialogue behind the scenes. What essentially happened, we now know, is that a subsidiary of Komodo, and Komodo has never even said whom, but we now know from this forensic analysis, one of Komodo's, Komodo is a so-called CA, a certificate authority. They have a subsidiary that they call RAs, registration authorities. And one of their RAs was hacked in some fashion, and we think we know how now, and a bunch of very high-profile websites got loose. And we're high-profile certificates for websites were made illegitimately. Mail.google.com. So an SSL, a valid SSL certificate for mail.google.com, for www.google.com, for login.yahoo.com, for login.skype.com, for addons.mozilla.com, for login.live.com, which of course is a Microsoft domain, and something called Google Trustee. Valid certificates for those high-profile domains were issued by this registration authority that has received its authority from Komodo. Now, the SSL Observatory, this project that the EFF runs, was able to state that knowing that these certs were signed by this user trust organization as of August 2010, so late last summer, 85,440 publicly transacted, that is, they've seen them on the internet, HTTPS certificates were signed directly by this user trust organization. That's significant because if we were to blacklist user trust, then 85,440 websites would suddenly have their certificates that they had gotten from this user trust organization declared invalid, and they'd have to scramble around to obtain SSL certificates from someone else. So after this became public, the other thing that happened was that I first became aware of it when Microsoft issued an emergency update through their Windows Update system, and looking at it closely, it was very clear that Microsoft was immediately adding a block of certificates to their untrusted list in Windows. I tweeted immediately to the followers of SGGRC that this had just happened and gave them the link to Microsoft's security page where you could choose which operating system you were using and yourself immediately update your version of Windows so that it would no longer trust these certificates. And the next day, it surfaced on, or shortly thereafter, surfaced on the standard Windows update as an important update that users should install immediately. So Microsoft, Google's Chrome, and Mozilla were all immediately updated. Now, one of the questions this raises is, well, okay, don't we have a facility in place for revoking bad certificates? And the answer is, kinda. It doesn't really work.
Huh.
And that's why all of these major browsers, well, these three major browsers were immediately updated. But what about less significant browsers? What about browsers that are not mainstream? There's lots of little offshoots that, didn't get changed, didn't get motivated, that didn't get updated, that aren't part of the central core browsers. To what degree are they vulnerable, and to what degree are their users vulnerable? So the other thing that happened when news of this surfaced is that someone began posting on Pastebin. We've talked about Pastebin once before because there was it's a way of anonymously posting stuff up to the internet that anyone who knows the URL, then you share the URL and people can go there and grab what you posted. A hacker was claiming that he's the person who did this and put a bunch of code and certificates and things up in order to prove it. Several people have, in fact, verified because he posted the private key which he used, and that allowed people to verify that he was, in fact, the person who created these certificates. What apparently happened was that this registration authority, who is a subsidiary of Komodo, had a DLL, which itself was empowered to log on to their servers and issue certificates. So this guy, who is believed to be an Iranian hacker,
Right.
there was some news, there was some speculation that this was state-sponsored, that this was based in, like Iran was hacking SSL in order to get certificates that could be used to spy on people.
It's possible.
it's possible, but it's again, we generally like the most feasible explanation.
Right.
And it looked like it was one guy, because if this was state-sponsored, no one in Iran would have gone bragging about this and posting this stuff on
true.
Pastebin and so forth.
Yeah.
So he reverse-engineered this DLL, which contained the username, the login username and password for the server that this subsidiary of Komodo, apparently User Trust, was using, and accessed their server and was able to induce it to issue these certificates. Now, Komodo found out about it, immediately revoked these certificates. We'll talk about that quickly. But then they also did find one server in Iran where one of the login.yahoo.com certificates was in use, meaning that in the same way that when Google Google gets a certificate for themselves, they install it on their servers so that when you connect to them over SSL, that server is declaring, I am google.com. And that's the whole point of a certificate, is that it is providing authentication in addition to encryption. So it was briefly the case that a legitimate server in Iran at an IP located in Iran was saying it had one of these fraudulently issued certificates installed on it, so that when you connected to it in Iran, it said, I am the login.yahoo.com server. And it quickly stopped answering queries after this revocation happened. So briefly, to talk about revocation, the idea is that certificates have a certain life. I like them. I complain about having to do this every couple years, but there's an upside to it, because by keeping certificates relatively short-lived, they will expire no matter what. And so the burden is on the certificate licensee, the owner, to go and renew the certificate with the certificate authority and get another one that's good for 1, 2, or 3 years. I think 3 is the most I can purchase from VeriSign, which is where I get mine. But what happens if, while during that window of time that a certificate is valid, if something happens? For example, if the certificate got away from its owner. So, for example, if Google lost control of the private key that is what makes its certificate valid, which has been signed by VeriSign, if they lost their certificate, then that is, if anyone else could get it and install it on some random server, that would be bad. So if that happened, Google could say to whoever signed their certificate, please revoke this certificate. We need a new one, and we need the one that we lost control of to be canceled. So there's a facility, there's actually two. One's called a CRL, a certificate revocation list, and the other is a protocol, an online certificate status protocol, OCSP. The certificate revocation list is a list which a browser client can download from the internet, containing a long list of all the certificates which are revoked but otherwise valid, meaning that, thank goodness for the expiration of certificates. So this list doesn't have to contain certificates which are expired. It only needs to contain them, the certificate serial numbers of certificates which would otherwise still be valid, except that they have been revoked by their issuing agency. And the point is, it's only by somehow proactively declaring a certificate invalid that it can be found to be invalid. That is, if bad guys get it, then they're going to want to use it. So somehow we need to tell our browsers no longer trust this certificate. However, still trust other certificates issued by the same certificate authority. Now, and of course, we've talked about the controversy of the fact that there's more than 1,500 certificate authorities wandering around the globe now, all equally trusted by our browsers. Okay, the second mechanism, this online certificate status protocol, that's a different approach where before trusting a connection, the browser will reach out and in real time check to see that a certificate is valid. So that's something that some browsers support that you can turn on to check it on the fly. The problem is both of these approaches fail open, meaning if your browser is unable to obtain information that the certificate is bad, it assumes it's good. So part of a spoofed attack, a spoofing attack, would be, for example, a man-in-the-middle attack, where somebody would intercept your communication. We've talked about this in Wi-Fi scenarios or hotel scenarios or, state-level scenarios. They would intercept your connection, and they would proxy your access to the internet. They would, when they saw you trying to go to login.yahoo.com, they would respond, they would accept a connection, respond using their fraudulent and revoked certificate, which your browser doesn't know is revoked. When your browser tries to authenticate on the fly that revocation, all they have to do is drop the connection. All they have to do is return a 404 or a 500 server error or bad URL, something that blocks your browser from getting an affirmation or denial, and all browsers currently accept the certificate, even though technically it's been revoked. This is regarded as a known and serious problem with the whole revocation process, is that the same mechanism that would have a bad guy able to pull off a useful exploit with the certificate, unless they were able to spoof DNS, which is the other way you do that, is to get someone to go to a bad IP address by spoofing DNS. But any kind of a man-in-the-middle approach would still have your browser believing that the certificate was valid because it wouldn't know otherwise. And when we step back from all this, here's the fundamental problem. When you think about the way our whole SSL, browser security, web authentication system functions, there's the fundamental technical design is fragile, because any certificate authority can certify to any user that any server owns any domain name. Therefore, the consequences of a misplaced trust decision are about as bad as they could be. And stated another way, the problem is a structural one. There are 1,500 certificate authority certificates controlled by about 650 organizations. And every time we connect to an HTTPS web server or exchange email encrypted by TLS, we implicitly trust every one of those certificate authorities. Because think about it, we've got these, as we've talked on this podcast, a huge block of certificate authorities we trust. We will, when we receive a certificate claiming the identity of a server we want to connect to, it is signed by any one of those, meaning that any one of those can sign a certificate, and we will trust it. So we are trusting all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wrong way to do it, obviously.
I read during the research for this one interesting concept that I haven't even had a chance to think through enough. But the concept is a different way of structuring the system where the people having the certificates are it turns things around. Instead of having a multi-year expiration, you have a multi-day expiration. All of your web server certificates expire every 3 days. And then so it's necessary for you, and this obviously would be automated in some hopefully good fashion, it's necessary for you to go out and renew, you have your web server establish a trust relationship with a certificate authority and dynamically renew your certificate every other day so that you're sure you're going to get it renewed before the one you have expires, or renew it every day or something. So, but it's sort of I haven't had a chance to think that all the way through, but that's an interesting, completely different approach to building this trust. Fundamentally the problem is we trust too many people. I mean, trust is too widespread. And there was a blog posting asking, well, do I really need to trust a certificate authority in China? And
no.
And I really don't think I do.
No.
I mean, I'm not going to Chinese websites because I can't read them anyway. So why do I have that certificate authority in my browser, which is subjecting me to the danger that of going to a spoofed website using using a domain, a super popular domain? Oh, and that brings up one other issue. There was a bunch of backflack aimed at Komodo, as you can imagine, and one of the real good criticisms was, wait a minute, not all web domains are created equal. Arguably, live.com, google.com, yahoo.com, microsoft.com. I mean, there are, in any statistical distribution, there's a relatively small set of super high value domains.
Right.
I mean, major focuses of the internet. And you would really think that all certificate authorities should be have a database of absolutely, bells and whistles should go off, sirens should sound if anyone tries to register any of this set of really high profile domains. Why was it that some second tier certificate authority even had the ability to issue certificates for www.google.com? And I mean, it really does say that this infrastructure could be hugely strengthened.
Well, I'm glad you talked about it. I could see why they haven't changed things. You change something like that, it breaks a lot of things.
Oh my goodness!
And who do you call this for support? So I could see why there's a lot of pressure not to change things. But boy, that's a mess.
Actually, though, it is the case that just changing that certificate expiration model, nothing else breaks if you change that. I have to think about that some more.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, I'll tell you what. Next week, feedback episode.
Yes.
Guess what? We're going to probably hear from some people who have some thoughts about that. Maybe you get to vet Steve's idea, and maybe we'll get an A+. grc.com/feedback is the place to go if you have a question for Steve. We'll answer as many as we can on the next show. Every other show we do that. While you're there, get that copy of Spinrite you've been holding out on. It's well worth it. If you have hard drives, you need Spinrite. Just the best hard drive maintenance utility. Nothing better. GRC, GibsonResearchCorporation.com. You'll also find a lot of free stuff there, including 16 kilobit versions of this show, transcripts of this show, full show notes going back 295 episodes. It's all there. at grc.com. Steve, as he mentioned, is on Twitter at SGGRC. He's also got a corporate account at Gibson Research. I don't know if you do anything more on the pads, but he's got at SGPad as well. Follow them all. Follow all three. Why not? And Steve, I apologize for the interruption from my son, and we will find the missing clock.
That was fun. I will talk to you next week for a Q&A.
Thank you, Steve Gibson. We'll see you next time on Security Now.
Security Now.